Hey guys, welcome back to the Midnight Ride. First one that I'm doing here on this channel. I forgot that I posted something on here a year ago. I don't think I told anybody about it. It obviously didn't hit the algorithm. I've got no views on it. Whatever. I went through the old channel, the main channel, and I privated close to 200 videos, mainly because I just felt like they were fluff and filler, and I wanted to tidy it up, keep it almost exclusively to book reviews and the one-off ideas and stuff. I can discuss that at midnight on the way to work and share it with you cats that way. It's not going to get as much traction. I don't really care. It's important to me that the main channel be nice and tidy and that the reviews be better over there. I did finish a book this week, first read of 2025, and I will cut a video for that out in the shop tonight. What do I wanted to what do I wanted to what did I want to talk to you guys about? Well, the YouTube algorithm in its random way fed me a clip from a movie that I have not seen since high school. It's called Renaissance Man. I don't even know what year it came out. I didn't look it up on IMDb or anything in preparation for this, but I have been thinking about it for the last couple of days. It's one of those movies that I've only seen once, but I remember it very well, and that clip stood out to me. And well, let's talk about it here. It stars Danny DeVito. It's one of those movies where he's the leading man and not just an accessory or a gadget character. And man, as I watched this clip, I just remember thinking, like, we used to get movies like this regularly, and now it feels like everything has got to be either this big event thing or this very, very limited release indie thing. And you don't just get a movie where there will be a little bit of advertising behind it and you'll go see it because of who's in it and it'll be good. I wish that there were more like this. I couldn't tell you what the budget is or anything. But Danny DeVito, he plays a guy who runs an ad agency, but he's had a few too many misses on his pitches, and he's behind on his financials, and this big deal that he was hoping for, it doesn't come through. And he makes a couple of mistakes. He's got a bit of an ego, and he's competent, but he's disorganized, and he's a little bit overconfident, and that leads to his downfall in the beginning of the movie. He loses his agency, and he's behind on payments for a bunch of things. His bills all go to collections. His rent is due. And so he's extremely down on his luck, and he goes to the unemployment office, and they're looking at his credentials, and he's like, well, I run an advertising business. And they're like, well, nobody's coming to the unemployment office and saying, please give us your advertisers. They're looking for other things, and they look at his credentials, and they find out that he's got a certificate to be a teacher. Apparently, like, he minored in English or in literature or something in college. He goes, yeah, I mean, I could, but it doesn't mean that I should. I'm not, I'm rusty on that. And they're like, well, we've got a teaching position for you, and if you want to claim your benefits or whatever, like, you've got to go take this job. Well, he's got to go teach on an army base, and he's got to teach like basic comprehension 101 to I don't know if the right word is subliterate, but basically unintelligent soldiers. And at the time, this was probably a bit of a countercultural movie, because this would have been, I mean, right after Desert Storm, there was the whole support our troops and we stand with the troops movement and stuff. So, like, making a movie about how soldiers aren't that bright was probably a little bit more taboo than it is now, these 30 some odd years later. But it gets into, in the movie, like, what kind of people enlist in the military to join the army, to become soldiers, and what leads them to do that in life. And they are often people who don't even have GEDs, people who come from rough family backgrounds and financial backgrounds, and they just end up in the army because it's something to do. They saw a recruitment poster somewhere, they went and enlisted, and here they are, but they're not all that motivated. And in a lot of ways, their ability to grasp complex concepts feeds into the difficulty that they have in advancing in the military. And so they have this basic comprehension class on this base, and Danny DeVito's character has to teach it. And It's a little bit tropey because it's one of those movies where like a troubled teacher has a class of troubled students, but they're able to reach each other, and there's that element of it there. But the quality of the execution transcends the commonality of the trope. It's done extremely well, and he's able to finally have a breakthrough with these students. And this is the clip that I saw when he teaches them the difference between similes, metaphors, and oxymorons. And these are all big words for these guys because, again, like a lot of them didn't graduate high school. And he says, well, a simile is when you're saying that something is like something else, like poetry. It's a beautiful way of expressing something. Whereas a metaphor is describing something being something. Like, for example, there's one of the female soldiers in the room. And he goes, all men are, she goes, dogs. There you go. Whereas a simile is something else. An oxymoron is like sweet sorrow or military intelligence. Like he starts to break through to them, and he starts teaching them Shakespeare. And through that poetry, they're able to grasp higher concepts because it changes the way that their mind works. I watched this movie as part of a world literature class, and the teacher used it as kind of a jumping off point of discussing, why are we focusing on this? This is senior year. This is when we are applying for colleges. This was still back in 2002 when there was a big, heavy push to do that. We're looking at what we want to do with the rest of our lives. What role does the humanities play in the value of higher education? This was a few years before I would go on to read Louis L'Amour's Education of a Wandering Man, which, I was already a reader at that point, but this was the book that really cemented in my head the concept of being a lifelong reader and a student as a lifestyle bit, because it would constantly elevate me and make me better able to process the world around me. There's that George R. R. Martin quote about like the man who reads will live 1,000 lives, but the man who doesn't will live only one. It is about like the true inherent value of literature and how it not just can make you smarter, but how it enriches your life and the experience of your life. And just seeing that clip made me realize like the impact that that movie had on me, and that's why I remember so many of the details of it. Like, not only does Danny DeVito go and teach these guys like, hey, you can do smart things, there's also a scene where he follows them through this military obstacle course, being short little Danny DeVito guy, and he learns, hey, I can do strong things. There's another scene from the movie, though, that has probably stuck through my head, and I have thought about this one over the years. He finds out that one of the guys in his class actually was an incredible athlete in high school, and he had a whole bunch of D1 schools recruiting him, but there were also party schools and stuff, and he didn't want to go down that route, and I think he ended up scrubbing out of D1 college or like purposely dropping out and joining the military. He's got a kid. He didn't want his kid to go through that life and feel that same pressure, so he went through the military route instead. And he said to the teacher, he goes, I'm not going to do anything to encourage my son to go the way of the athlete. I'll give him books and stuff like you did. And DeVito teaches him something important. And this was especially relevant because on X this week, there's been a lot of talk about the value of the jock archetype versus the nerd archetype. And I'm proud to run in circles with guys who reject that being a dichotomy, saying that you can only be one or the other. This is a pop culture notion that we need to reject. We can be integrated men. We can be strong men and smart men, well-read, but also athletic. DeVito explains to this D1 athlete character, he says, have you ever heard of Leon Battista Alberti? He was a man from the Renaissance era. That's why this movie is called Renaissance Man, because he's teaching these students not just about Shakespeare, but about the era of the Renaissance. That was, when the average man really started to lay hold on the value of higher learning and literacy and all of that, how becoming an integrated man was a value. He goes, Leon Battista Alberti was a lot of intelligent things. He was a musician, he was a writer, he was a philosopher, he was a scholar, a million other things. But there's this, there was a saying that said Leon Battista Alberti could stand in front of you with both feet on the ground and then jump and clear the head of another fully grown man and land behind him, meaning the man had an incredible standing vert. And this is where DeVito tells this D1 soldier student, he goes, if not for that one fact, I wouldn't have remembered anything else about him. We have a tendency to revere exceptional athletes, which is a cool thing, but I like that there's becoming more of an emphasis on revering scholar athletes. I think about guys like Andrew Luck, who graduated with an architectural degree from Stanford, but was also the #1 pick in the NFL draft in 2012. There have been a couple of other guys who were star all-pro players in the NFL, but like one dude went to Oxford, or there's some MIT guys and stuff. Like, I like this concept of being an integrated man. This is a concept that I would like to see more broadly explored among people, and I'm just really glad that this random YouTube algorithm spurt put that clip in front of me, because it makes me want to go back and like rewatch that movie, see what else I can learn from it, and recommend it to people. So, hey, what do you think about this, about becoming this way? Being athletic, but also being academic. That's why I try to take care of my physical health, but also encourage my kids to read more. I've told this story before on my main channel. This not really argument, but kind of back and forth that I had with my brother over the years when I was reading a Tim Rare novel, which was a historical alternate history fantasy. The Napoleonic War with Dragons, and he was reading a book about the history of salt. And I was like, man, you read boring stuff. But I've shifted my focus over the years to from reading mostly or almost entirely fiction to reading a great deal of nonfiction and history, just because it edifies me and I find it to be of value in that way. But I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't generally love reading to begin with. And this is where I'll close with a quote from Louis L'Amour, going back to Education of a Wandering Man, where he's said that it doesn't matter what you read in the beginning, only that you read. Because if you read things that you love until you love reading, you will eventually love reading a great deal of things. And if there's anything the world needs more of, it is the adamantly literate. Anyway, that'll do it for tonight. Check back for another one, subscribe and share and such. I imagine it'll be a while before this channel takes off, and I think that's fine. I want to see what a channel does when it doesn't have one massive video to prop it up like mine, like with the Mayflower video. I would like to see what else I can do to grow a channel organically. So, the drill. Thanks. Drive safe. See you out there.